Hi, I'm Joan Hawley with Lazy Girl Designs, and today's project is the Gracie handbag. So let me introduce you to Gracie. She's a wonderful sized bag. We have a couple of nice features. We have a shoulder strap, a flap closure. She's fully lined, pockets inside, and she even has a nice sturdy bottom. So let's get started. She's a real simple project, and if you can cut and sew a straight line, you'll be able to make Gracie. Now the front, if we take a look, is composed of 3 panels that run down the front of the bag, across the bottom, and then up the other side. So this is pretty simple to put together. So we're going to cut our 3 pieces, fold and press, giving them a nice crease, and then we're going to assemble. And that fold is going to do double duty for us. We're going to center them by nesting our folds and go ahead and stitch. And we're going to do that for all 3 pieces to put the cover together. And when we're done, it's going to look like this. So the cover or the outside of the bag is done and ready to go. So let's set this aside and move on to our next part. Pretty good so far, pretty easy. Now the inside of the bag, we're going to choose a piece of batting that can be quilted up to 8 inches apart, is rather thin. Here I have a piece of polyester, quilter's fleece or craft fleece. Get your favorite basting spray. Now this is just a basting tip that anybody can do. We can either pin baste this or spray baste it. We're going to cut a piece of fabric for our lining, and we're going to fold it in half and press to get a crease this way, fold it in half and press to get a crease that way, and then just smooth it into place onto the batting. Now next we're going to need a pocket for the inside of the bag. Now this is a handy way to make a pocket. Here we have just one long piece of fabric. Fold it right sides together so that our edges meet in the middle, and we're going to stitch along both raw edges. Now we have this nice opening here in the center, so we're going to go ahead and turn it right sides out. And this is our pocket for the entire center of the bag. So far so good, pretty easy. Now next we're going to fold this little cutie. Let's get this straightened out. We're going to fold it in half this way and press, and then fold it in half this way and press. And our fold lines are going to intersect at the center of the project, making it real easy to line up with our lining of the bag. We're going to do a little bit of stitching here, which is actually quilting. And we're going to measure in from our edges a certain distance and stitch through all layers, as well as stitching on the edges of the pocket. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So here we have a finished inside of the bag, and we've done our stitching through all layers, and as you can see, we've started to create a pocket here by stitching on the edges. Well, we've got the inside done. Now at this time, it's a good time to test your acrylic base and make sure it's going to fit in the pocket we've created at the bottom of the bag. This is just a test fit. We want to make sure it's going to fit in there so that when we finish the bag, take this out before we continue, that we know that's going to work. We've got the outside of the bag done too. We're going to layer them right sides together, match all of our edges, and stitch around, leaving a little opening to turn. And when we come back, we're going to finish today's project.
Another sewing machine attachment that didn't take the world by storm was a treadle-activated sewing machine fan. Patented in the 1870s, it sold for $1. It must have represented the greatest advance towards summer sewing comfort since the invention of lemonade. We'll put that in our toolbox and be right back.
All right, we're ready to continue with our project, but before we do, let's take a quick recap and see what we've done so far. We've put together our cover with 3 separate panels sewn together. On the other side, we've selected our batting, sewn our lining and our pockets to that. We layered all the pieces right sides together, stitched around the edges. We've left an opening to turn that through here on the side. We've trimmed away our extra batting and our corner seam allowance. And before we turn this right sides out, where our project cuts in, we need to take a little snip all the way through the seam allowance to the stitching line to make sure that this will lay flat when we turn our project right sides out. So now we're going to turn it right sides out through our little opening here, and this is going to be hidden at the bottom of the bag when we're done, so it doesn't really matter how nice that looks. Let's set this aside and take a look at what our project looks like turned right sides out. So here we have what we call a sandwich. We have our fabric on one side, fabric on the other, our batting in between, and all of our edges are finished. Now we're ready for some quilting. Now earlier in the project we measured in from the edges and we stitched some lines. We're going to stitch on those lines again one more time to stitch completely through the project. So let's do that. We're going to take a minute to close the opening where we turned our project right sides out. Now we're ready for some quilting. So let's turn it over to the cover side, and this is great. We're going to use these lines as landmarks. So let's start in the corner of our project, and we're just going to top stitch along the edge, turn, and come down our project to that bottom stitching line at the middle of the project. We're going to pick it up again over here and continue on. And when we do that for both cover panels, that is both decorative and functional. It is our quilting, it's decorative top stitching, and on the other side of our project, remember our pockets? Since we stitched through all layers, our pockets are now divided into 3 pockets each on both halves of the bag. We have a couple more things to do. Now remember, we have a flap closure that we need to prepare, so let's take a look at how that goes together. This is a wonderful, simple way to make a closure for any project. And remember, any of the tips and techniques that we use here can transfer to any of your other projects. We're going to take a simple piece of fabric, we're going to fold it in half and press, match that to the edge of our batting, open, put our hook and loop tape in place, stitch around, close this, stitch our edges, and when we turn this right sides out, trim away our batting, we get this wonderful clean finish. Top stitch on your edges, Velcro on one side, and it's ready to go on our project. So from the cover side, we're going to find the location for this, stitch across the edge, flip it over to conceal that raw edge, and stitch again, and our flap is done. Now let's take a look at how to make some handles. I have a wonderful, easy way to make handles that you can use on this project or lots of others. Now our handles are a wonderful little length. They're wider at the bottom, narrower in the middle, and there's no batting in here. We're just going to take a piece of fabric, fold it in half and press. We're going to open that. We're going to match the edges to that fold and press. And you'll take a little more time and do this a little better. And when we're done, what we have is what resembles double fold bias tape. Now I have a wonderful lazy tip for you here. Take your favorite adhesive spray, open it up after you've folded it, give it a little spray, and that'll hold all of your layers together when you're ready to sew. We're going to do some quick, simple top stitching along both edges to hold all of our layers together. Then we're going to fold the whole thing in half again and stitch just between the middle on top of that top stitching, and we have our wonderful decorative handle with this great feature being wider at the bottom and narrower at top. We're ready to put this on the bag, and this is real easy to find the placement. We're going to go to those top stitching lines, match the edge of our handle, stitch, and flip. And we're going to do that for both handles on both edges of the bag, and our bag is almost done. So here we have our bag. We've already got it folded in half, so let's take a look inside. We've got our handles in place, we've got our Velcro flap. We're going to fold the bag in half, cover sides together, match our edges, and we're just simply going to stitch from the top edge of the bag down to the bottom. Now here's where the magic comes in. Let's reach inside our bag, spread it out, and remember those bottom stitching lines? We're going to stitch on top of those one more time. Do that for both edges, and when we're done, slip our baggy bottom in place, and our bag is finished with a nice, wonderful, sturdy bottom. We have a couple of finishing touches to add. Let's take one more look. We've made a wonderful handle design. We have an easy to do flap closure, and our finishing touches could be as simple as adding a button for decoration, or from the inside of the bag, if you'll take a look, we've pressed our seam allowances flat and stitched one more time along the top stitching to hold those in place. Let's take a closer look at today's project and see some easy ways to embellish and personalize the Gracie handbag. The bags we're going to look at were all entries in a Gracie handbag challenge hosted by Quilt Trends Quilt Shop in Columbus, Ohio. And there are some really wonderful ways to embellish. First, we have the center panel of our project, which was actually pleated. You can see all these little folds, and in between the folds we have prairie points. We have this wonderful button and ribbon and fantastic bead embellishments. Very simple to do, and you insert that at the beginning of the project when you're sewing your 3 cover panels together. Next, with quilting and embroidery, we can add wonderful embroidery designs. Again, add these before you sew your 3 panels together, or after you sew them together before you put the whole bag together. Do some cross stitching for your quilting, add little bead embellishments, and you're ready to go. You can also make the most of your fabric by fussy cutting to have your design show up where you like it. And lastly, create some applique designs, add some themed fabric, and you get a nice, wonderful bag. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you have fun making the Gracie handbag.
What can you do with a square or two? Use the Flying Geese ×4 ruler from Lazy Girl Designs to make flying geese, half square triangle, quarter square triangle blocks, and more. Make more than 150 original and favorite block designs with no math, no triangles to cut, no wasted fabric, no bias edges, and no templates. So get a little goosey and take a gander at the wonderful world of flying geese and more.